Kevin Hurley, who is a former Detective Chief Superintendent in the Metropolitan Police, joins me now. Kevin, good morning.
Morning.
Morning. A horrible subject to talk about. I was going to say, actually, in my introduction, that many people over the last day or two will want to forget the sentencing and the graphic detail that came out from that sentencing. Much of it actually too graphic to broadcast. And it's one of those things that you kind of want to put to the back of your mind, just because you don't want to keep thinking about the harrowing, grotesque nature of the crimes that were committed by the monster that is Axel Rudakubana. But I would also argue that we need to make sure that, actually, in contrast to that, we ensure that we keep in mind the names of the victims for evermore. And we need to make sure that we do that, indeed, so that we don't forget them. B.B. King, Elsie Stankham and Alice da Silva Aguiar. We must make sure that we remember them. And let's hope that the parole board in 51 years' time remember them too, Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think the key thing about this and all these dreadful events is, let's not legislate, let's not make decisions in anger. So let's pause and allow our sense of anger, frustration, and frankly, horror to subside before decisions are made as to what may or may not come next. But I think there's one clear thing that, to me, if you like, as a professional who's been involved in child protection issues, managing very difficult, deviant youths like this particular one, is concerned about, and it's this boy, or now man, came to the attention of police, education, social service, psychologists involved in prevent, countless times, and yet he reached this stage. Well, there's a need to look at, why is it that whether it's police officers and their supervisors, social workers and their supervisors, teachers and their supervisors, or psychologists and their supervisors, have lost their professional curiosity and their desire to frankly do the right thing. Because what's happened in society, what generally happens, often in anger or frustration, immediately politicians or civil servant type leaders, and I include that as police ones, bring in some system to check that won't happen, and they actually drive out the use of common sense by their staff, who once would have thought, this doesn't look right, this one is turning into a right wrong'un, I need to so we come together, make sure this one doesn't go off the rails.
Yeah, sorry, Kevin, we lost you for a second there, so your line might not be as intact as we'd like it to be, but let's persevere. Let me ask you a question. I do want to talk about sentencing. You say not to knee-jerk react. Some politicians are definitely going to do that. Some would call that opportunism or populism. Let's come back to that in a second. You talk about the failings of multiple agencies, it seems, in the journey of this evil monster to do what he did in Southport. What do we think the reasons behind those failings are? Do we think it's incompetence? Do we think it's lack of resource? Or I'm going to suggest, as many of our audience members will, that it's something else. And I'll come back to that in a second. But do you think it's either resource or competence, or a bit of both?
All of those, plus much more. Because everyone who was involved at looking at this case knows how to do their job, generally speaking. But what's occurred over the years as a result of increased bureaucracy or increased checks that are placed on people, you kind of ring fence round the ability of individual police, social services, education, or psychologists to think, oh, he's a right wrong'un, this one. We need to do something. Let's pick up Fred or Anne in social services. Let's get a multi-agency conference together and look at what we've got in the round here and manage this case to prevent something terrible happening. And what we've done, we've caused the situation to happen where people become more and more silo, like, if you like, in their operations.
So Kevin, you're
Mainly
suggesting it's admin, it's bureaucracy, it's
no,
bureaucratic treacle. Is that what you're suggesting?
no, I'm not. I'm not. I mean, that's part of it. What I'm suggesting is a mindset has developed within various organisations and the leadership of it, driven by politicians who knee-jerk and say something must be done, and that trickles down the line to the teachers, the police chiefs, the head of social services. Right, we'll bring in this system and we'll do this, instead of saying, you guys and women, you men and women who are the professionals, if you think someone's a wrong and it smells like it and it looks like it, seize it and push the boundaries with your partners to pull it together. So what I'm talking about, in an ideal world, what might have happened by the time we'd got to maybe the second, third prevent, and we were meeting, fact he'd been continually ejected from school, assaulted people at school, been taken to court with possession of a knife and so on.
Yeah.
Get people together and say, do we actually need to take this child in, because he's a child at that time, into care for his own protection?
Or to have him not just into care. I mean, the flags and the signs were all there that he should have been sectioned under the Mental Health Act for his protection and the protection of society.
Yeah, exactly. I was about to say that. The options are take him in, potentially see if you could take him into care, and if necessary, put him into controlled care, i.e., into what is effectively a young person's detention centre, or does he need further mental health referrals? And the concern to me is each one of these separate groups, separate people, separate agencies have kind of dropped the ball. If there's something that needs to be done, there might be a case for creating an intelligence system that everyone contributes in, and in some cases that will.
And Kevin, so what you're saying is that people within those agencies, no one wants to make a big decision because they're worried about being the person that's made that big decision and maybe getting it wrong. So instead of taking a risk, getting it wrong, albeit based on the facts and the evidence, they shy away from the decision. I'm going to suggest something else, though, which I know that the people listening to this and watching will now be asking, which is there an ethnicity angle here? And what I mean by that is that we've talked a lot, particularly since the summer, the unrest, the riots in the summer, of two-tier care, two-tier justice, two-tier policing, which to many of us has been absolutely 100% evident in Britain. And I know there are many on the left that say it doesn't exist. The government says it doesn't exist, but you'd have to be a moron not to acknowledge that two-tier policing and two-tier justice does exist and is alive and unwell in this country. Do we think, potentially, possibly, that one of the reasons that this monster has slipped through the net so many times is because those people in those agencies were being overtly protective because of political correctness, because of his ethnicity, second generation immigrant, that they didn't want to be seen to be, inverted commas, persecuting someone of an ethnic minority in case of, and again I go back to the proof with regard to why the grooming rape gang situation festered and progressed so much, was because the police, not your old service, but the Greater Manchester Police, said we did not want to incite racial tensions. Do you think there could be an element of that here with regards to the Rudakubana case?
An excellent point. Humans, as I do.
Sorry, Kevin, just say that again. Sorry, we lost your line just for a second. Say that again. So are you agreeing with me or disagreeing?
You make a very good point. And knowing human beings as I do, almost undoubtedly that will have been at the back of the minds of the decisions of people, that they would not want to be too robust, lest they are challenged either by a pro bono lawyer or by an activist group in taking some form of quite strong action to control the behaviour of that boy. Combined with, in the cases of some of them, possibly a sense of post-colonial guilt or something similar to that.
Do you mean wokeism, Kevin?
You might call it that. I'll call it post-colonial guilt, which is a term used in the Macpherson inquiry. Exactly that. But I'm sure.
Can we just hang on, Kevin? I know it's not you advocating post-colonial guilt. What an absolutely ridiculous phrase that is. I mean, who on earth allows that phrase to continue in public parlance? Post-colonial guilt. We did more for colonies and other countries in terms of pulling them up by their bootstraps in terms of showing them how to trade and work commercially. We did more for those countries than we get credit for. But to now, 250 years later, and again, you know, whether it's slavery reparations or whatever, to be using that phrase, not you, but others in the police service, in social services, as some kind of reason to let certain demographics off the hook. That we've literally gone through a wormhole here, haven't we?
Well, I mean, formally they wouldn't use that term, but I think it plays into the minds of lots of people who'll be working in those organisations, because they're now being spoon-fed at school and at universities how bad the United Kingdom or Great Britain was in the management of its colonies, India, the Caribbean, Africa, and so on. So if that's subliminally put into the minds of people, a lot of people will think, yeah, we weren't good to people of colour.
And it's filtering down, and then as a
of
consequence, you end up with cases exactly like Axel Rudakubana.
Yeah.
Yes or no, Kevin? Death penalty, should it be reinstated?
Well, you know, if you're talking about me personal knee-jerk and what I think, I believe in vengeance, actually, as a, you know, just my life. Whether or not a modern society should do that, there's an argument maybe it should, but if we were, we'd need to have immense numbers of checks and balances to be certain that was the right person. But again, I make this point, in this case,
But he pleaded guilty.
we would be saying, let's give this death penalty to a 17-year-old child.
Yeah, but he's not a child in the murders that he committed, is he? No one cares about that.
Yep.
No one cares.
No, I agree.
If you're big enough, if you're big enough to commit an adult crime, you're big enough to hang.
Well, the issue on it is, of course, he's a child in law, and what does it look like elsewhere in the world when people look at our society? You know, don't get me wrong, I'm not defending him. I know what I would personally like to do to him, and it would be, it doesn't bear talking about on TV.
No.
But, you know, legally, he's a child.
Yeah, well, he's not now. No, now he's 18, but of course he committed these atrocities about 8 days before his 18th birthday. Kevin, I've got to let you go. I've got to move on. The switchboard is lighting up. I'm going to get some calls.